Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. We are live. I'm here with Sophia Wood from Friends of Wallacea. Sophia, please say hi to the people.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Okay, so we're going to talk about Caribbean food first, and later on in the show, we're going to talk about Friends of Wallacea and your wildlife conservation through community-led ecotourism. Yeah.
Sounds great. Yes.
First of all, can I ask you, what do you actually prefer? Do you prefer Caribbean cuisine or do you prefer international cuisine?
That's a hard question. I feel like it's a trick question. I've had some really amazing Caribbean cuisine all over the Caribbean, especially in Puerto Rico and Guyana. It's definitely got to be in the top favorites of mine. I have to say, I live in Mexico. Mexican food is pretty near and dear to my heart, but I think I enjoy a wide variety of cuisines from around the world. It's really hard to pick a favorite.
Right. I hear you. So what is your favorite international dish?
Oof, that's a hard question. I'm gonna have to say maybe something like a pad thai, like a Thai noodle dish. Something like that is probably my favorite.
Okay. All right. Funny enough, I think a Thai shop that's opened up in our village not too long ago, but I haven't tried anything from there yet. So, yeah, you've given me a reminder to go and check them out.
You'll have to go try it. I grew up in Seattle, which has a very large Asian immigrant population, and grew up with a lot of Asian foods. So I feel like it's really a comfort food for me.
Okay. So, what type of dish is it? And can you say the name again, please?
Pad Thai.
Pad
It's a rice noodle dish that's usually done with sort of a tomato, like slightly sweet and spicy sauce. Some usually like pan fried egg. Peanuts is usually in there, and then like tofu or chicken, some scallions. It's a really simple dish that you can pretty much get at any Thai restaurant, but it is just one of those things that you come back to time and again. It's just so comforting.
Okay. Yes, it sounds interesting. And your favorite Caribbean dish? What's
I think my favorite Caribbean dish, especially that I had in Guyana, was saltfish and bake. I'd never had that before. It's kind of a typical Guyanese breakfast, at least, with sort of like a shredded dried fish in a fried, almost like a patty or bread. And I had that in many days, many places all over the country, and I just absolutely fell in love with it.
okay? So the patty was it baked or fried?
I think I had some baked and some fried. I felt like most of the ones that I had were fried, and that's probably why they tasted so good. But given it's called a bake, I think some of them are baked as well. Definitely not an expert, but I felt like most of the ones that I had were fried, so they're really get a nice little grease in there with the fish, and the combination was perfect.
Okay. Can you, by chance, remember any of the places that you might have got that from in Guyana?
Yeah, so I definitely ate it at a lot of people's houses. I think we'll obviously get into this a little bit more later on, but a lot of the work that I was doing in Guyana took me into really remote internal parts of the country. So I was eating this, cooked by aunties from their houses and stuff like that. But the one I most remember, because I honestly think it was maybe the first one I ate, or maybe it was just the best one, was in the town of Parika, which is about an hour and a half from Georgetown. We got there in a taxi. It was on the way to Warapoka, one of the communities that Friends of Wallacea is working with in Guyana. And it's literally, I mean, I'm sure it doesn't have an address because it was a street stall just right in front of the dock, right before you get on the boat. They had a wide variety of sort of typical Guyanese food. They had some saltfish and bake. They had chana. They had some kind of roll that now I can't remember the name of. But that was the first time I tried the saltfish and bake. I had no idea what they were saying, like telling me that it was when I first got it. I think, I was a bit surprised to have fish for breakfast. That's not really usual as an American, but I actually really, really loved it. I think it would be quite easy to find. It's like the last stall right before you get on the ferry from Parika to Supanam.
Okay, so that port is called Parika.
Yes, the town is called Parika, Parika.
Okay. Well, and how long were you in Guyana for?
Just over 3 weeks last year in April.
Right, right. It is a lovely place. I've been there once. It was only like for a long weekend, but I found the people were lovely.
I had a fantastic time in Guyana, to be honest. I'm really missing it and wish that I could go back.
Okay. So I understand you're in America, yeah?
Yes, I'm from the United States, but I live in Mexico City.
Right. Okay. So where where you live? What sort of is there Caribbean food around you?
I think that there is a little bit, to be honest. Mexico City is obviously a huge city, about 23 million people, so it's pretty diverse. And I have seen a couple of Caribbean places. I think the most common Caribbean food that we get here, which I know isn't, I don't know how it's classified in terms of Caribbean food, is Cuban food. I've definitely had more Cuban food than any other Caribbean countries, or maybe Puerto Rican as well is relatively common because of the common Spanish speaking aspect, obviously. And I love Cuban food, so definitely have had my fair share of Cuban sandwiches and tostones while I've been here. But that's probably the vast majority of the Caribbean food that's here in Mexico City. At least that's widely available in terms of restaurants.
Right, right. So the sandwiches, and you said a particular name of an item.
Yeah, tostones. It's fried plantains.
Oh, okay.
Fried plantains are a personal favorite of mine, I have to say. I probably should have said that instead of pad thai. I work a lot of the time in tropical regions, especially in Ecuador, and fried plantains are very common, both the mature ones and the green ones, which I know is also quite common in the Caribbean, and I can't get enough of them.
So how would you have that as just like a snack on its own? Like
Yeah, a
chips?
lot of the time, especially the green ones, they'll cut really thin and then fry like a chip. But then my favorite preparation, it kind of depends on the country what they call it. In Ecuador specifically, which I realize is not part of the Caribbean, they're called patacones, and they'll cut like, obviously plantain is shaped like a banana, so you'll cut sort of 1 inch or 3 or 4 centimeter long chunk, fry it, then soak it in some salt water for a little bit, and then you flatten it with the bottom of a glass or something, and then fry it again, and it gets like perfectly crispy. To Americans, it almost looks like a chicken nugget. It's kind of like round and flattened, but because you've double fried it, it's like perfectly crispy and then pillowy on the inside. And truly, there's nothing better. I think I'll take back pad thai and put in patacones instead, because honestly, they're one of my absolute favorite foods.
Okay. And where in Mexico would you go to get what Cuban restaurant would you go to get it?
There is a Cuban restaurant relatively near my house called La Bodeguita del Medio. I'm trying to remember what street it's on. It's in the Roma Norte neighborhood. And I've had some really delicious chicken from there, and as well, uh, I'll never leave without having fried plantains. So that one's great. Honestly, where I end up eating Cuban food, so I'm a huge salsa dancer. I love dancing salsa, so there's a lot of, obviously Cuban culture and cuisine related to that. And there's a salsa club here in Mexico City called Mama Rumba that also serves Cuban food. That's also in the Roma Norte neighborhood.
Okay, all right. You broke up slightly towards the end there for a second.
Do you need me to
Um,
repeat anything?
just the last section would be excellent.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a big salsa dancer. I love to dance salsa. And so I end up spending quite a bit of time at salsa clubs here in Mexico City. And one of them, called Mama Rumba, is also in the Roma Norte neighborhood. Um, and they serve Cuban food there as well. So, I mean, usually I end up having mojitos more than food while I'm out dancing. But I know that they serve a wide variety of Cuban food there as well, which is kind of unusual at a club bar, but they have live music. So it's a common place for people to go and hang out.
Okay. So big sauce, salsa dancer, yeah?
Yes.
Oh, they have a few clubs over here, but I'm too timid. It seems pretty like wild and exciting dancing.
Once you have a few mojitos in you, that changes.
Okay. So can I ask you, when it comes to pepper, is it none, slight, medium, or pepper?
That's a good question. As someone who lives in Mexico, I've become a little bit more cautious about my pepper consumption because I feel that here people have a very high tolerance for very spicy food. Um, in in Guyana, though, I really enjoy spicy food. I usually will have pepper with my food when it's offered, and but it totally depends on the kind of pepper, as you probably know. Some kinds really stick with you for a long time, and there's this one, I don't know what it's called, but there's one that we ate a lot in Guyana that was very small and round and yellow, and it gives just a burst of pepper for a moment, and then it sort of subsides, and that was so much more manageable than these really long lasting peppers that you feel go all the way down your throat and stay with you for the rest of the day. So I'm often cautious, but if I can control the
Okay.
amount, I will always try it.
Okay. So would you say it's medium then, or slight?
Yeah, medium sounds good.
Right. Okay. And where do you keep your pepper sauce? Is it the fridge or the cupboard?
Um, Most of my pepper is in the fridge.
Right. Okay. Tomato sauce? What
Uh,
about that? Fridge or cupboard?
Fridge.
Right. Okay. And there's no right or wrong answer here. Just curiosity,
No, no,
basically.
it's in the fridge.
Um, pineapple on pizza?
No, no pineapple on pizza.
Okay. Is that a big thing in Mexico? Like, there's no pineapple on pizza over there, or is it just
So it's interesting. It's not common to have pineapple on pizza here in Mexico, but one of the most popular dishes here in Mexico City is something called tacos al pastor, which means like shepherd's tacos, basically. And they actually come from Syrian and Libyan immigrants coming to Mexico a really long time ago and bringing shawarma. So they're cooked in a very similar way with the big rotating, tower of meat. But what was once shawarma made with lamb and beef is actually made with pork here in Mexico City, and the taco al pastor is always served with a small piece of pineapple that's roasted on the stick along with the pork. And so, although the pineapple's not common on pizza, I've actually gotten used to eating the salty pork with pineapple here in Mexico because the tacos al pastor are very common, and you'll see the big rotating towers of meat all over the city with their pineapple on top, and all the different taco chefs have a different way of cutting it off.
okay? So that would be similar, like the say Turkish kebab.
Yes,
Oh right, okay.
exactly. It has
But
a
the
very
meat is
it has a
pork.
common root. The meat
Right.
is pork, so obviously not the same
Yeah.
as what you would find in the
Right.
Middle East where the populations are more Muslim. Here it kind of became a pork dish, and it's pretty much always served with pork. But yes, if you've been to the Middle East or Turkey, it will look very familiar. They share a common root of that rotating meat around a hot flame.
Right. Interesting. Um. Okay. So what is your favorite drink?
I'm super boring with drinks. I think my favorite drink is probably sparkling water. Uh, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love to have a glass of wine or an alcoholic drink every once in a while, especially when I'm traveling. But on a day-to-day basis, I'm definitely addicted to sparkling water. I know that makes me
Okay.
pretty boring.
No, I can't get the hang of sparkling water. It just makes me dizzy for some reason. Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. So, what is your favorite alcoholic drink then?
um, Also good question. I feel like usually I'd go really simple, but one thing that I think one drink I always enjoy, is kind of similar to a rum and coke actually, is I used to live in Chile. For most of my adult life, I've lived in Santiago, Chile. So I've only lived in Mexico for a short period of time. And the most common drink there is, again, like a rum and coke. It's called a piscola. So it's made with pisco, which is a grape brandy that's made in Chile and Peru, mixed with Coke. Very simple. I moved to Chile when I was 19, and so it was really the first time I was being able to drink. As you know, the drinking age in the U.S. is 21, and I fell in love with that. I think like it's not something I can commonly drink here. Pisco is not really commonly drunk outside of Chile and Peru, but I'll always come back to that one. I can replace it with a rum and coke when I'm working in the Caribbean.
Okay, okay. And favorite vegetable?
I think that's got to be either broccoli or artichoke.
All right. Okay. Favorite fruit?
That one's definitely blackberries.
All right. Okay. And when it comes to pets, are you licky face or no licky face?
I'm a licky face.
All right.
I'm a total dog person. My family has a very friendly golden retriever who's about a year old, and he is very into licky face. So I don't mind.
Right. Okay. And just out of curiosity, what are you looking forward to eating later?
Later today, um, I had just talked about what I was going to make for lunch. I have a feeling that I'll be having.
Yeah.
Oh, can you still hear me? Oh, there we go. Um, yeah, I have a feeling I'll be having actually artichoke because they're in season right now, so we have some, um, and a big fresh salad. One of the big things that I love here in Mexico City is we're really close to lots of agricultural regions, so we're able to get fresh produce all the time. And we had a delivery of fresh produce come in yesterday, so I'll be making a huge salad with everything that came in.
Okay. So an artichoke salad you're looking forward to later. Yeah.
Yes, and maybe some tacos just to
Right.
sprinkle on top. Don't
Okay.
want it to be too healthy.
Okay. So imagine if you won the lotto or the lottery tomorrow, but the only condition is you had to pick a Caribbean country to go to. Which country are you picking?
uh, it's got to be Cuba. I've always wanted to visit Cuba. As a salsa dancer, I feel like that's yeah top
Ah,
of my list. I would love to go, and then probably go back to Guyana if I got to do another trip.
yeah, I've always wanted to go to Cuba for the cars. They have some
Yes,
beautiful old cars over there, vintage cars. Love
yes,
to go and see it for that.
yeah.
Okay.
I've
So
really
let's
wanted to
now
go.
talk.
Go ahead.
Okay, so let's now talk about um, what you do in Friends of Wallacea. Um, because ecotourism, or is it that you get tourists to understand about the environment on your tours?
Yes, that's a pretty good description of it. We obviously ecotourism is a very broad term that we sometimes use to describe what we do. Another term that we like to use is regenerative tourism, and the real kind of definition of that is to leave the place that you're visiting better than you found it. And sort of the way that we focus on doing that is ensuring that the money that you're spending is going to local communities always, and that those communities are dedicated to doing something with it, either working on local community development, making sure that there's job opportunities or healthcare or whatever local projects that they deem important, and they're investing that in the community, and also dedicated to conservation efforts. So a lot of rural communities, and particularly indigenous communities, protect really large areas of wilderness, particularly in Guyana. And by bringing tourists to visit these communities and participate in viewing wildlife and sometimes even monitoring wildlife along with scientists and local naturalist guides, you provide an income, obviously, for the communities to be able to continue protecting wildlife, and also the incentive to do so because tourists come and they give a financial motive behind keeping rainforests or other wild areas standing. So, I mean, ecotourism in general focuses on leaving a minimal impact and trying to travel in a way that's conscious of your environment, both obviously, you know, the environment and also local communities, sort of ethically in terms of labor standards and you know, leaving a positive impact. And we try to go a step beyond that.
Right. So, what type of people normally approach you? Is it you approaching them, or they actually are looking for the type of tools that you provide?
We have a mix. Obviously, unfortunately, Friends of Wallacea started right before the pandemic. So it's been obviously a little bit slow going in terms of tourism coming back, as you know, tourism was one of the hardest hit industries in the pandemic, and particularly really rural areas that were a little bit more off the beaten track and more of an adventure tour type of thing. So we have a mix. Obviously, you know, we do our own marketing. We put ourselves out into the world to try to explain what we're doing, try to get in front of people who might be interested. But we have a very close partnership with Operation Wallacea, which is a long-term biodiversity monitoring company based in the UK, and they have a long history of bringing high school and university students out into the field to do research in rural areas, remote places like the places where we work. But we only, you know, Operation Wallacea only works with students, and you know, their parents, their teachers, their friends, aunts, uncles, etc., often have an interest in traveling to these places that they go to that aren't necessarily currently open for tourism because they're just there for the communities that live there or scientists. And we work to sort of partner with the communities and have tourists come that aren't scientists who are willing and interested in, you know, supporting communities that they travel to. So we've seen an interest from a wide variety of people, from, you know, young people who are interested in starting a career in biology or want to learn more about it, or work in something completely different but really want to get out of their comfort zone and try something new, to older people who are retired or towards the end of their careers interested. We get obviously a lot of people who are bird watchers or wildlife enthusiasts, photographers, stuff like that. So we get a broad mix of people, but obviously what they have in common is an interest in doing something really different and knowing that it has a positive impact on the people that they're visiting.
Right. And interestingly enough, I recently done a couple of shows on littering in our country. It's a terrible problem. And I presume when you go into these forests with the indigenous people, they would live from the land. So they're not really using plastics, and they're probably composting and stuff like that. So it'd be interesting to see like their approach to littering from like someone who's used to city life, you know?
It's very interesting. I'd say it totally depends on the community nowadays, because many communities have a lot of access to cities or places where they can buy packaged foods. And obviously, you know, occasionally purchasing packaged foods, even things like rice and stuff like that, can save a lot of time versus producing all of your own food. And one of the issues in these communities is that because they're in such remote disconnected places, they don't have waste management systems like we have in cities where, at least, in Mexico or the United States, you throw away your trash, you put it outside, and it disappears from your life, right? Like you don't see where it goes, which it ends up in a landfill. It obviously does not disappear from the planet. But we don't really have so much consciousness about the path, the life cycle of that plastic once it disappears out of our backyard. Whereas when you're in a community like this, you have this realization that it's really easy for plastics to get in, and it's very hard for them to get back out. So actually one of the things that we work on with the communities and work on with tourists is just the tourist transportation can sometimes create more flow of movement of people and objects than the community might have had otherwise. And so we can help create consciousness both to help bring some of that plastic trash back out of the community and ensure that when tourists are coming with us, they're not leaving trash there, because the communities don't have a way of dealing with it. Even if they are, the most conscious and passionate environmental stewards, there's nothing you could do. There's no landfill, there's no trash truck that's going out to Warapoka or the middle of the country in Guyana and picking up their trash that tourists brought there from the United States. So it's our responsibility also to help deal with that problem and take out, kind of like when you're backpacking, pack out your own trash system.
And so, is it only Guyana? What other countries or any other countries in the Caribbean?
We don't currently work in any other countries in the Caribbean. We work in Peru and South Africa, Croatia, and Romania as well, besides Guyana. But Guyana is our most active program at the moment.
Right. Is it because basically the smaller islands in the Caribbean are just too small?
No, they're not. We have so Operation Wallacea has a long history of working in Dominica. And so that's a potential area that we could look into. A lot of Friends of Wallacea's work has been partnering with existing Operation Wallacea partners because we have a long history of working with them. And so especially because of the pandemic, we haven't expanded to places that we haven't worked before. Guyana, we've worked for a long period of time, as well as Operation Wallacea. And we have a great relationship with the Guyana Tourism Authority, who are truly investing a huge amount of effort and funds into rural communities to help build tourism and protect wildlife. We're really impressed with the work that they're doing, and they're working with us on some of our projects in Guyana. So that's kind of helped push us forward into working in Guyana. But the other Caribbean country where we've worked in the past is Dominica. We also have sites on the Mexican and Honduran Caribbean, which I realize aren't as much part of the Caribbean cultural community, but obviously part of the geographical area.
Right, okay. Is that the Republic or Dominica?
Dominica.
Oh, right, okay. Lovely. Oh, so there is hope that one day you might get out to Trinidad or Jamaica or
I would
in the
love
future.
To go. I would love to go personally. Someone just needs to send me.
Recently doing these programs on littering in our country, it's like we take it for granted that the dustmen or the garbage collectors are just going to come on and pick up everything. But the reality is they don't. There's so much litter on the road, so much litter which then transfers into the rivers and the swamps, the mangroves. It's a sad situation. The problem is that we've got no bins over here. So where do the people throw their rubbish,
No, waste management is obviously a major issue in a lot of countries. And usually, more than a cultural problem, it's an infrastructure problem. It's an issue of actually not having management strategies in place, and that people don't necessarily want to litter or aren't unconscious of what they're doing, but don't necessarily have an alternative. We've seen it in a lot of the communities where we work. As I said, it's really easy for plastic to get in, and a lot of the time it's so much harder for it to get out. And especially in really small islands in the Caribbean, or any small islands anywhere, it's much harder. The logistics of getting the trash back out, the cost of that is exorbitant, and often countries don't have a way of managing it. By the way, before we close out, I did prepare a couple of restaurants in Guyana. If you would like those in terms of Caribbean restaurants, that's where I've eaten more Caribbean food than in Mexico City. So I'm happy to talk about those, which I think will be more interesting than what I've eaten in Mexico City. So yeah, I think the best meal that I had, besides at people's homes, because literally I think there's nothing better than home cooked food, honestly. So I can't say, you know, I ate at so many beautiful people's homes in Guyana and so many people took me in, but the best restaurant meal that I had in Georgetown was at Backyard Cafe. It was excellent. It's on Rose Street and Corlita Street.
That's the name, Backyard Cafe. That's the name of the place.
Backyard Cafe. Yeah, Backyard Cafe. The guy was the owner was trained with Gordon Ramsay, and then he came back and wanted to make a really unique Guyanese cuisine, kind of like, I guess, fancy cuisine, and show the world really the beauty of Guyana's produce and fish and what's available, but really elevate it to another level. You have to make a reservation ahead of time, so it's not open all the time. You sort of have to make sure that they're open and reserve a spot. So I did that with a couple of days notice before I finished my trip in Guyana and got to finish my last day there with my guide and as well one of my staff members. So we got to enjoy a fantastic meal. They change the menu all the time and you can sort of pick fish or meat. One of my staff members pescatarian, so we had their fish menu, and they brought us several kinds of fish, fresh salads, fruits and vegetables, fresh juices with as much rum as you wanted. And it was a fantastic evening. I highly recommend it. I would definitely go back if and that's actually, you know, for anyone who travels to Warapoka with us, we do plan on doing the last night in Georgetown at Backyard Cafe, because it's just a beautiful place to end the experience and have a real Guyanese cuisine dinner.
So you said the chef trained with Gordon Ramsay.
Yes.
So it's like a high class Caribbean restaurant. Is it Caribbean food they're selling there, or is it international food?
It's Guyanese food. So he really wanted to, again, exemplify Caribbean and Guyanese cuisine for the world. So everything is locally purchased. Everything is, you know, prepared. Obviously, he's added his own flares and touches and experimenting with different flavors, but all of it comes from a Caribbean base. So we ate fish that was native to Guyana, one that was from saltwater, another from freshwater, all prepared with local spices. And I can't pick a favorite because everything was so good. I left there totally stuffed. I don't think I even had breakfast the next morning. But yes, that's a slightly fancier place. I do have a slightly less fancy place for lunch. I stopped one of the days that I was in Georgetown at Shanta's, which is just in the middle of town. It's on Camp Street and New Market Street, basically just right on the corner. It's a really small Indian Caribbean restaurant, very typically Guyanese. And I think I had roti and chana, super simple, very economical lunch place, fresh coconut water, so good, really hit the spot. Those two really stood out to me when I was in Georgetown. As I said, I obviously spent a lot of time outside of Georgetown at people's houses, so it's harder for me to go and recommend them. I did have great food. I did participate in the great Guyanese debate between cassava bread and farine, but I don't have as many recommendations of restaurants because I didn't spend too much time in town.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you for adding that. And as I say, like, we put all the information up on the screen so the people would be able to see exactly where those restaurants are. Yeah. So how can the people get in touch with Friends of Wallacea?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way of getting in touch with us or following what we're doing is probably following us on social media. We're active on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, mostly at Wallacea Friends, spelled the same way as Friends of Wallacea, but Wallacea Friends. I think we also have a Twitter account, but it's a little bit less active. So I definitely recommend Instagram. That's probably where we're the most active. We also have a website, friendsofwallacea.org. So you can, of course, go and see what tours we have available there. A lot of them, because of COVID at the moment, are by inquiry only, but we'll always get back to you via email if there's availability and other people going out on the tours. So we'd be really happy to hear from you. You can always also send me an email at sophia@friendsofwallacea.org, just like the website, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But the website and our social media, especially Instagram and Facebook, at Wallacea Friends, is the best way to keep up with what we're doing.
Excellent, excellent. And what about any sponsors or people you might want to give a shout out to?
I guess we don't have any, we don't necessarily have sponsors. I definitely want to give a shout out to the Guyana Tourism Authority. They've been hugely supportive of this project, of Operation Wallacea and Friends of Wallacea working in Guyana, and particularly of all of the indigenous communities in Guyana that are so interested in protecting huge wild spaces. Guyana, I think, is the second most forest covered country in the world, as 75% virgin original forest cover. The forests are incredibly healthy, and that is thanks to the communities that protect them largely. 90% of Guyana lives on the coast, 10% lives in the interior, and those are mostly the indigenous or Amerindian communities that all manage huge pieces of territory, and many of which are really dedicated to the long-term conservation of it. And the Guyana Tourism Authority in particular has worked with us, and works really well with those communities to help train and provide the capacity for communities to start working in tourism and gain income through the amazing wildlife and landscapes and places that they protect. I also shout out Luke Johnson. He was my guide in Warapoka. He's Guyanese. Definitely recommend him as a guest someday here as well. Fantastic guide. If you ever need a birding guide in Guyana, I can't recommend Luke highly enough, and he works with us as well, running our tours. And yeah, my whole team at Operation Wallacea obviously has been incredibly supportive of us starting this project in Guyana and giving me and Friends Wallacea opportunities to go and travel to these places and open them up for tourists besides the students. So I'm really thankful. I'm thankful to you for giving us a chance to speak on your podcast, and it's wonderful to be a part of it.
Absolute pleasure. So regarding the sponsors, are you actively looking for sponsors?
Not necessarily, I guess at the moment. Yeah, we are a for-profit company, and so obviously we run through projects and tours that we sell. We do have a partnership with the Guyana Tourism Authority, and certainly we would be open to discussing other opportunities with organizations if they're interested. We have worked with governments in the past to be able to develop these kinds of programs in other places. So I'd say we're not necessarily actively looking, but we're absolutely not closed off, and we're really open to discussing these opportunities. As I said, our commitment and our passion is to protect wild places through tourism and working with local communities, and I recognize that there are huge parts of the world that we still aren't active in, and that we would love to be able to help. So if you are interested, you think there might be a chance that a place near you might want to be a part of this, we'd be happy to be in touch.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we've got all your contact info, and we'll be putting it along the screen again. Just to ask you, because you're in a position where with the Guyanese people, you've met people on the coast, which is, as you say, 90% of the population, and the people living in the heart of the country, which is only 10%. Now, you're probably one of the only few people to know how different are the people, dialect-wise, accent-wise, look-wise, even.
I'd say one of the things that actually most impressed me or surprised me about Guyana was just how diverse every part of the country was. I'd say, obviously, largely demographically, the communities that live in the interior and outside of the main cities are indigenous, and they come from 9 different indigenous groups, at least, if more, at least nine recognized groups. And there's a huge amount of variability between languages spoken between those groups. They're largely language-based groups. And all of the languages are extremely different. I am not an expert on Guyanese Indigenous history, so there may be some that are closer related than others. But in my experience, the languages were very, very different from each other, despite communities sometimes living even in the same regions. Whereas on the coast, you do really have a huge cultural melting pot of African descendants, Chinese descendants, East Indian descendants, and indigenous people, and all mixed, colonial descendants of a lot of different European countries as well. And so, Guyana prides itself on being a very diverse country that coexists beautifully, with a lot of, I think, cultural syncretism and mixing. Again, I'm no expert, but many of the Guyanese holidays are, not culturally based on one community. They are a mix of Guyana's cultural heritage of having this indigenous, Indian, Black, European colonial heritage that has created really purely a Guyanese culture. And so I'd say, sure, there are differences, but it's a country that really is united behind a few things, many of which are food, like pepper pot, and I know garlic pork, and saltfish and bake, and things that really unite the entire population behind certain gastronomic or cultural experiences. And that, I find it's a beautiful country, truly, in terms of the human aspect of it. I feel, the diversity is well represented through the entire country, and people really have a national pride and heritage that's connected.
Sophia, I really do want to thank you for your time on the show. I've gained so much knowledge about Guyana as well, which is incredible. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, English. I really appreciate the invitation, and look forward to keeping up with your show in the future. It sounds like what I've learned for sure is that I haven't eaten enough Caribbean food, and I love to eat, so I'll need to try a lot more things.
Yeah. You have a blessed and wonderful day. All right, and
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy your artichoke salad.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.